How are you finding Telford so far in the brief time you've been here?
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Beautiful, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Nice reaction. You know your audience.
Yeah.
Right, Daredevil, this iconic figure, this comic book character that's got so steeped in history.
Yeah.
How familiar were you with the character before you kind of started the audition process?
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people know this story because it's obviously been in the media a lot, but nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. And I was actually I was shooting a TV show that I wasn't feeling very good about.
Okay.
And most people are like this, but I hate auditioning. It's sort of like really makes you nervous and it messes up your whole day and the whole thing. And so whenever I can avoid auditioning, I don't. And because I had this job, I wasn't auditioning. But it wasn't going well, and I didn't have high hopes for it. And I got this audition come through. We were on a night shoot in New York doing this other show, and this audition came through, and I thought, oh, do you know what? I'll just learn it and just see how I feel about it in the morning, see if I'm up for it. So I learnt it. And the guy who was helping me, one of the crew members on this other show, was helping me with it. And he was like, I think this character's blind. And I was like, I don't think so. I think I'd know. I think they would have put it down in the, they would have put it in the notes, And so, yeah, I got to the audition and did it. And they were like, yeah, that's good. You know he's blind, right? Right. No, I don't. Sorry.
Were you surprised with how brutal the show was? Like when you kind of were reading scripts and stuff, because it's a very intense, graphic, violent series in the best possible way. Obviously.
Yeah, I guess it read quite violent, but I didn't. Those are just words. So it wasn't until we kind of got on set and we started doing the action sequences that I started to be involved, and they started to learn the fight scenes and also see what my double was doing and stuff. I was like, oh wow, this is brutal. Are you sure he's a hero?
Well, there is that fine line. Now we can't talk anything specifics about Born Again, but were you surprised to get the chance to return as a character? If that's a question we can ask.
Yeah. God, I was. I really thought that ship had sailed. I thought it was over, and it'd been a couple of years since. I didn't know. What I didn't know was that there was an embargo on that. So there was an amount of time. I think it was probably 2 years after the show was cancelled before Disney and Marvel could approach us. So during that time, I didn't know that. So I just thought it was over. And Vincent, who plays Wilson Fisk, him and I would chat occasionally on the phone, and he'd kind of say, I'm sure they're going to bring us back. And I'd be on the phone being like, mate, the guy's delusional. He's got to let it go. And then, we got this during COVID. I went out for a walk with my wife, and I came back and I had a voicemail, and it said, my name's Michelle, I'm Kevin Feige's assistant. Can you give us a call? And I thought, I was like one of those moments where you think it's a prank call,
right?
So that was a very cool moment.
Yeah. So were you once obviously the original series had been cancelled at Netflix? Were you kind of at peace by that point with like, yeah, I'm not going to come back to Matt Murdock. It's done. I wish I could. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, it's like, oh right, okay.
Well, I was so happy with how season 3 had been received, and it felt like if you're going to end abruptly, ending on a high is the way to do that, So, but it's kind of a weird, I've been playing that character, 2020, it was 6 or 7 years I've been, playing that character. So it's quite an odd thing to suddenly feel like, oh wow, I'm never going to do that again. Yeah. So yeah, it was bittersweet, and then of course, now we have this weird. What a strange thing to be starting afresh, but having also been doing it for 20 years or something. For 10 years, I mean.
Yeah, and I suppose it was quite a smart way to continue on that character by the She-Hulk appearances, the Spider-Man.
Yeah, so that was kind of the way back in, and that was something that on the phone call with Kevin, and he said, I don't know what we're going to do, with you specifically going forward, but we want to start with a little cameo in Spider-Man and the little couple episodes of She-Hulk, which was so much fun, and it was a nice kind of easy way back in. I mean, when we shot that Spider-Man, and I had that line, "I'm a really good lawyer," that was just one of the lines.
Yeah.
And I must have signed that. So, I mean, a million times since then,
Have you done any today already?
I've done a few today. What's funny is when someone comes up and they've written, "Can you put I'm a great lawyer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the line, right?"
I can do it for if you want, but it's not technically right.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you weren't familiar particularly with the character before you got the role, but did you go back and read any certain stories? Because obviously there's, especially some...
So when I got the role, I had a couple of months, and I had a lot to do. Like, I had a lot of training to do, and, reading the comics and learning martial arts, and there was like my days were full, and all of the visually impaired stuff that was kind of vital to get right. So I started with Born Again, actually. And then moved quite quickly onto the Bendis Malieve stuff, which ended up kind of really being the staple, tonally the staple for our show. End of Days. After that, I think I went back and read Frank Miller's first run.
Yeah.
Jeff Loeb was my boss for the Netflix show, and so I did Daredevil Yellow, and then I went back to the beginning really and just started. I signed a number 4 today, which was pretty cool.
Oh wow!
There you go. They had issue 4.
Wow!
And I've signed a couple of issue 1s, and I always think like, whenever I sign one, I'm always like, "Are you sure you want me to sign this?" Like. Maybe someone better is going to take over the role at some point, and you're going to wish I hadn't signed it.
Like Ben Affleck crossed out with the top, is it?
Yeah. I was at a con somewhere last year in America, and someone showed up with one of the pictures with Ben Affleck in the costume. Right. And I thought, oh, that's quite funny. That's a funny thing. I'll sign his costume. Right, great. So I signed it, and then I don't know. 20 minutes later, someone else had one as well. I was like, that's weird. But, whatever you want. If you want me to sign it, I'll sign it. So I signed it. And then about another one, and I was like, there's something going on here I'm not getting. And then I realized Ben Affleck was at the same con, but his photos were at my booth. So about 15 people, I think they didn't know. I think they just picked a Daredevil one, and now they've gone home with me signing his face.
And Affleck just had a pile of Boardwalk Empire pictures.
Yeah.
I really hope that wasn't the series you were talking about, but just to veer off Daredevil for a bit, Boardwalk Empire, huge show, HBO, Terrence Winter, Martin Scorsese behind it, Steve Buscemi leading it. How much fun was that to be involved in, or was that the show you really didn't like, you don't want to talk about it?
No, that was brilliant. I love that. Yeah, no, I love doing that, and I mean that was such a gift, that role, because I was looking to do. I'd done quite a few kind of independent movies, and I'd enjoyed them and they were fun, but no one had seen them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was looking to do something a little bit more commercial, and that was the first time. Boardwalk Empire was the first time a really big director and like movie stars turned to TV. At the time, I mean, now it's everyone's doing it, but back then it was unheard of. I remember when I found out that Scorsese was doing a TV show. It was unheard of. And when I got that role, they said, "Look, we don't know where this character's going to go. We're going to give it a few episodes and see if it seems to fit into the world." And I went really deep with the accent as well. He was from a place called Coleraine, and I went really deep into the accent. And I got on set on the first day, and I started doing my lines, and they were like, "What language is he speaking?" So we had to dial that back a bit. And then that character just kind of I got really lucky with, I had all my stuff with Steve, but then also I had, all the stuff with Kelly and it was that, there's a wonderful guy at Marvel Comics called Joe Quesada, and he was part of the creative team on Daredevil, and he told me that he was watching Boardwalk Empire when he found out that that Marvel were gonna get the rights to Daredevil back from Fox. And he was watching the show, and he saw the scene where I garrote a guy in the bathroom. And he called his boss and said, I think we should consider this guy for Daredevil. So that was pretty lucky.
That's my Matt Murdock right there.
Yeah.
We are going to come out with questions for yourself, so get some of those ready. There will be people coming around with microphones, so just pop your hands up if you've got any questions for Charlie. As mentioned, we can't talk too much about Born Again, so none of that, sorry. But yeah, one of your first big movie roles, one of your first movie roles, period, opposite Al Pacino in The Merchant of Venice. As a young, 21-year-old, 22-year-old, 20-year-old?
Yeah, I was at drama school.
That's pretty
I was
nuts.
at drama school, and so we finished the first year of drama school, and at the end of the first year, that's when you do your first production. You don't do it in the first year. They cast you in the production for the end of the first year. So I'd done the first year, and we were going to do a tour of the Nativity in the West Country, and I was cast as one of the shepherds, which was like a good role. And my job for the summer holidays was to learn the recorder, because we had to play all the songs and stuff. And so they gave us this little box with the recorder in. But the first day of the summer holidays, I had this audition. And I went up to London, and it went really well. And I was like, right, I'm not going to learn the recorder until I know that I haven't got the job. And so I then had a recall a couple months later, and then I had a third meeting. And I don't really know what happened. I kind of blacked out. But the next thing I remember, it's the day before school, and I haven't heard about the job for a month, and I haven't opened this box that's got this recorder in, and I'm not musically gifted at all. And I opened it up, and I'm just in a blind panic, and I can't even figure out how to put the thing together. And I was sitting in my house in Bristol, and I was like, oh, I'm in such trouble. I just don't know. I had like all these Christmas carols to learn, and the phone rang, and it was my agent, and she was like, "Yeah, you got the job." So I went into school the next day, and I said, "I haven't learned the recorder, but that's because I'm going to do a film with Al Pacino."
So you're on the cusp of being the worst recorder playing shepherd ever, to then go and work with Al Pacino.
Well, I was on the cusp of probably being like suspended or expelled or something. So yeah, I got by the skin of my teeth.
It worked out all right in the end. Awesome. Always take chances on that. Right, questions. Oh, over there we've got one.
Hey Charlie, how you doing?
Hey.
My question I'd ask you is probably one from your earlier works. I was more familiar with you through the film Stardust, and I suppose the question I would like to ask is, because it was quite a big stellar cast, ranging from the likes of Henry Cavill to what's his face in the lawsuit in America at the moment, Robert De Niro and all that. I mean, the question is, do you have any memories of what it was like working with them, and how does is it one of your favourite films that you like doing?
Yeah, it was very special. A very special time. Just a kind of I was a kid. I mean, I was 21 or something. Did you say that? Or 20?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, it was a long time ago. And just to be pulled out of my life in that moment. I mean, I'd done The Merchant of Venice, so I'd done a couple of things, but that felt like a big leap. Yeah, man, it was wicked. And Peter O'Toole and Michelle Pfeiffer, Claire Danes. I mean, it was an unbelievable cast. I got picked up. One of the first in pre-production, they called me up and they said, "Can you come and do a rehearsal with Bob?" And I was like, well, I thought Bob must be the stunt coordinator, or I don't know, the voice coach or something. So I was like, yeah, whatever. And I just put on some tracksuit bottoms and I went down to Pinewood Studio. And I was sat on these steps outside one of the rehearsal rooms smoking a cigarette. And then Bob showed up. And I had to have a fencing lesson with him, yeah, it was very surreal, very, very one of those moments you'll never forget. There's a bit in the film where, I mean, he was editing his movie at the time. I remember he was editing, because he had like 3 trailers. And I was like, who needs 3 trailers? Why can't I have one? And one of them was the editing suite for The Good Shepherd that he was making. So he was kind of catching up on the script and the story and all that. And I remember him saying, like, what is this Babylon candle business? And I was like, yeah, it's like this. I don't know. Don't know what to say. And he was like, can you get them in Harrods? So it was very funny. Yeah, it was great. Very cool. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, it's a little Daredevil.
Oh, DD, what's up? What's your name?
Timmy,
Hi, Timmy.
how many times did you not see where you were going with the beanie on?
Yeah, great question. Can you see through yours?
No.
Yeah. So, the one they made me was made from quite a thin gauze, so you could actually see through it. But the problem is when we were in a very dark room, you couldn't see as much. So a lot of the fight sequences either happen at night or they happen in a grotty basement somewhere or something like that. So it was quite tricky, and sometimes it was so dark we'd have to cut holes in the mask, and then I guess they put CGI, they put the eyes back in at the end. Yeah, it was fun. I don't think I ever bumped into anything, but it was kind of good practice, you know. Nice question, Timmy. Thank you.
There's a question at the back. We've got a couple at the front as well who, after that, Brill.
Hello. I got a question. So basically, obviously you're familiar with the comics. Obviously he has a lot of crossovers with other Marvel heroes.
Is that Morgan?
Yes, it is. Oh my God, you remember me? Hello.
Hi, mate.
I was just wondering.
I remember that Tash.
It's lovely and that's gorgeous. I was wondering if you could have Daredevil interact with anyone in the MCU, previous as well, obviously like Captain America, Iron Man. Who would you choose? Like, who would you want to see him bounce off of? Thank you.
To be in scenes with?
Yeah.
Oh, man. You know, I think this whole cinematic Marvel kind of decade and a half, 2 decades, whatever it's been, where it's really been a staple of so many people's entertainment consumption. A lot of that is, I think, credit to Robert Downey Jr. and the work he did with that character. That kind of, you know, I almost sometimes think of Marvel as almost the house that Downey built, you know what I mean? And I was actually catching up on some of comics recently, and I was reading one from 2020 where him and Daredevil and Iron Man have a bit of a run-in together, which is quite fun. And I was thinking that would be very cool. I don't think that's possible now, because he's dead, isn't he? But, you know, it's Marvel. Who knows? But that would be cool. So, you know, from a personal reason, I think that would be cool to have that little moment. But as a Daredevil fan, Black Widow, maybe, you know, DD's famous for having lots of relationships.
Yes.
That'd be a fun one to explore.
He's a very friendly fella.
Yeah.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi, what's your name?
Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Thank you so much for being here. So I am legally blind myself. I was born with a visual impairment. And you mentioned learning about the visual impairment stuff. Daredevil as a character means an awful lot to me. So I was just wondering, in your research, you know, did you learn anything that really challenged your own perceptions about blindness?
Yeah, God. So the biggest thing for me was how I realized once we started acting. So I did a lot of the kind of technical work. I worked with a gentleman called Joe, who's been legally blind for himself for, I guess, 25 years now. It was 20 years at the time. And I was learning all my cane technique and all of the kind of the gadgetry that he would use and his computer and stuff like that. And he'd spend time in my apartment, and I'd film him making tea and just doing everyday chores just to kind of like learn all that stuff, as well as also trying to watch what his eyes were doing, you know, so I could get that right on camera. And that kind of felt very technical, as it were. But then once we started filming, it suddenly became apparent to me of how much I use my eyes to draw emotion in a character. So, you know, as a sighted person, I look in the eyes of the people that I'm talking to, and I draw emotion that way around. I guess, I don't know what I thought before that. I think maybe I thought, you know, emotions kind of are born in you and then you display them. And I actually don't think that's true. I think it comes out from, you see it in the eyes of other people. You take it from the world and then it affects you. And so I had to kind of learn a different way of doing that. You know, I had to learn how to feel that through people's voice, and maybe their proximity to you and stuff like that, or physical touch, obviously. So that was very eye-opening, to use a phrase. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And actually coming back to Daredevil recently is, again, it's been a while and it's been something that I've had to kind of relearn a little bit. And I think it's difficult for other actors as well. You know, they're so used to making eye contact with the people they're working with, and that's not an opportunity with me. So it's cool. The other thing is I learned with Joe is, you know, I was able to have very candid conversations with him, which was important. And I said to him, look, you know, I have to be honest, Joe, sometimes I feel like you're looking at me, more so than other times. And he said that he's actually learned that he activates the muscles behind his eyes when he's talking to someone, because he feels people pay more attention to him if they feel like he's looking at them. So it's almost like, feels a bit like a stare sometimes, but he's doing it because he's activating his eye muscles, or the muscles behind his eyes, so that people engage with him better. It's really fascinating. Sorry, that's my ride. Gotta go.
Good afternoon,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen. Last minute Merlin talk will take place.
If you all leave now, there's a mass exodus.
To the Doctor Who panel.
Okay.
Last minute Merlin talk will take place at 2 p.m. in the talk halls, straight after the Doctor Who panel.
I think I might have another panel I need to prep for at some point now. Yeah. Brilliant.
Oh look, my mum's gone.
Right, I think we've got time for one last question right at the back there. Lots of waving.
Hello. Basically, I was just wondering, obviously you were in King of Thieves alongside Michael Caine and Michael Gambon. Did any of these sort of actors who've had long careers offer you sort of any advice to give you, you know, to prolong your career?
Wow, what a good question. So look, the best thing about doing that film was all the gentlemen that were in that film were all quite old. And so when we would finish filming a scene, they didn't want to go all the way back to their trailers because it was too far. So they put some chairs just by the sets, which is, for someone like me, this is just heaven, because now I get to sit with these guys. Because normally when you're making a film, you know, you chat a little bit, but then in between scenes or setups, everyone goes back to their trailer, and then you just sat by yourself doing nothing. So we would sit around and talk, and I got to listen to all these amazing stories and anecdotes. I don't know if I learned anything. I mean, I learned a lot from working with them, obviously, and you know, kind of witnessing these iconic actors' work. But the best bit for me was hearing all these funny, crazy stories from the 60s and the 70s, and when it was a slightly different time, and the carnage. So yeah, it was a very special movie to make, that one. Thank you. A good question.
Brilliant. That's a cracking question to end on.
Yeah.
Charlie, thanks for coming and giving up so much time to join us, tell some stories.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, Charlie Cox.